Hello everyone, my name is Evie Lupine. Welcome back to my channel, and today I have another video for you all. Today, in honor of Pride Month, we are once again focusing on some more asexuality related topics, and today we are going to be discussing demisexuality because I found out through the video that I did on BDSM not always being sexual that actually many of you are demi, and I have many close friends in my life that are demisexual as well, and I find it's a label that is very misunderstood. It has a lot of misunderstandings about it, and so today I want to talk about what it means to be demi and hopefully help everyone better understand what this orientation is about, and hopefully help you understand a little bit better if this label might be right for you. So the first thing that we need to cover, obviously, is what is demisexuality. And demisexuality is an orientation where you do not experience sexual attraction until you have an emotional connection with or a bond with someone. This could be romantic in nature, which is the most common. It could also be platonic or other forms of connection. Now, this does not mean that the person always experiences sexual attraction once they have that bond, but rather the attraction isn't there unless that bond is formed first. And you can be demisexual and gay or lesbian, you can be demi and heterosexual. So in some ways, demisexual is more of a modifier label because it doesn't tell you who you are attracted to, but more so when you are attracted to them. But of course, just based off of this simple definition, a lot of people have many questions that spring into their head. The first one being, so is demi like being asexual then? Is it on the ace spectrum, or what's going on there? So this is something that is up for debate. So I will go through the three main lines of thought that people have about this. The first group of people say that demisexuality is part of the larger ace spectrum. It is a variety of asexuality in a way because they do not experience sexual attraction by default. They do not experience relationships or attraction in the typical way that an allosexual person would, and so therefore they belong as part of the larger ace spectrum. The next group of people kind of see demi as a variation on asexuality. It's between being allosexual and being asexual. It's in its own bubble called gray asexuality. Now, for my own take as somebody that is gray A, I would consider being gray A or demi to be closer to being asexual than being allosexual. I don't really like having it as its own separate category because I think for most of us that have a label like that, our experiences are way more often asexual than they are allosexual. Like 99% of my existence is more like being asexual than it is like being a typical sexual person. So I'm not necessarily a fan of that separation, but the final group say that demisexuality is actually a variation on being allosexual, not on being asexual, because they are able to experience, quote, normal sexual attraction. And because they do have sexual attraction, but it only shows up under particular circumstances, to them that's more like being allosexual than it is like being asexual. Now, for my own 2 cents, I would say that that last description is mostly used by aroace people that don't really want demisexuals to like be in their club. I'm not saying that demisexuals don't identify that way or don't resonate with that description. I'm just saying that when I have seen people discuss this and use that perspective, it has mostly been from people that are not demi themselves. And so I would say the first two of the explanations is probably closer to most people's internal understanding, but these are just some guesses, right? These are just some possible descriptions, and whether or not you see yourself as a demisexual person as belonging in the ace community or not is going to be up to you and how you relate to your orientation. And after this, the next most common response, especially from non-ace people, is like, isn't that just like being picky or having standards or choosing to wait to have sex? I don't see how this is an orientation. And you know what? To a degree, I can't necessarily blame people for making that assumption. And the reason why is because if you have ever read a YA romance novel, you may be familiar with a trope called compulsory demisexuality. And how this comes out in books is when you have a female lead, they are not typically at first interested in the male lead. They may be friends, they may get along, but they don't see each other like that. They don't have that kind of relationship. But over the course of the book, through going on an adventure together, overcoming something, just plot happening, they end up eventually transitioning from one type of relationship into suddenly being more romantic or outwardly sexually attracted to this person. However, I don't think this comes from a place of genuine orientation, of like, we're doing this on purpose to have demisexual representation. I think it is more about sort of preserving this idea of feminine sexuality where in order to be womanly, to be feminine, you do not overtly express your sexual desire, at least until you are in a relationship. And it is socially virtuous to wait for it until you are in a relationship or until you fall in love or get married or whatever. So I don't think it's an orientation thing. I think it's a social standard preservation thing, if that makes sense. So I think that can somewhat taint people's opinions of what they think demisexual actually means. And it's not about being picky. It's not about having standards or waiting to have sex. It's not about abstaining. Demisexuality is not about a conscious choice to wait to have sex. It is about not having sexual attraction for a person until you have that bond or connection. Because you can choose to wait even if you are attracted to someone. It's not about, oh, I'd like to have sex, but I can't because it's bad for XYZ reason. It's about, I am unable to experience attraction, to even know if I like you that way, until we have that bond to begin with. And this really goes hand in hand with the other assumption that people make about demisexuality, which is like, oh, well, if that's what it is, then isn't everyone demisexual to some extent? Because, you know, most people don't really like no strings attached, zero emotion sex, and most women especially choose to wait to have sex until they are in relationships. And again, I have to bring out the old adage that I have said many times before, which is sexual action is not the same thing as sexual attraction. It is true that many people maybe do not like one-night stands. However, that connection is likely still based on sexual attraction. You see a person at a bar, you're like, wow, they're hot, I would have sex with them. You go home with them, you have sex, but it's not fulfilling because you didn't really have a connection. That does not make you demisexual. You still had sexual attraction, which was the basis for the interaction, even if you were unsatisfied with it. And again, choosing to wait to have sex for social reasons, for cultural reasons, whatever else, is not the same thing as not experiencing sexual attraction to begin with. Not the same thing. And speaking of sexual action and sexual attraction not being the same thing, demi people can still choose to have sex even when they are not experiencing attraction. And this is something that many asexual people do across the spectrum. There are people that are sex favorable or sex neutral or sex indifferent that are okay with having sex with people even when they are not attracted to them for various reasons. We have talked about this many times before. It can be because you want to have children. It can be because it makes your partner happy, because it's socially important to do so, whatever else. With demi people, the slight variation on this is that some demis will choose to have sex because they anticipate the connection eventually happening in the relationship where they will experience attraction. So they're kind of like taking an educated guess. They're taking a risk on having sex without the attraction because they think it'll happen at some point. And on the positive side of this can be a reflection of having good conversations with your partner having a good understanding of your boundaries and your limits and what you want to do and when, and then being aware of your attraction status. The unfortunate dark side of this is many demi people, gray A people, and so on feel pressured to say yes to sex even when they don't really want to or feel that attraction, because they have come to understand that they can't have the relationships they want to have unless they say yes to this, especially in monogamous relationships. Most people, eventually, they will say at the beginning, I'm okay with this, I'm okay with not having sex, and then a month in, 2 months in, however long, they go, I'm actually not really that okay with this. Bye. See you later. And with demisexuals, there's even this extra layer to it because it's not like they would never experience sexual attraction. They could, but they might not be able to have a relationship that goes on for long enough for that attraction to happen naturally if they don't say yes to sex or other activities early enough on in the relationship, which is really, really sad. And I know this is like kind of a downer point. So I will just say that if you are somebody that is ace, or anybody for that matter, if you ever feel pressured to have sex when you are not ready for it, it is okay to say no. I promise you, there are people that will be compatible with you, that will respect that boundary, will understand your needs and your attraction. And it is better to wait for a relationship where the person will respect you instead of saying yes because you are afraid of losing that person. Please trust me on that one. It is not worth it. And there are people that will be okay with what you want, that want the same kind of relationship that you want to have. It just might take some time to get there. And moving in a hopefully more positive direction, how do you know if you're demisexual or not? You know, this one's a hard one because orientation is a difficult thing to figure out. Some of us know right away, we're gay, we're lesbian, we're bi, whatever. Day one, we have it figured out. But for a lot of us, it is a process of questioning and figuring things out and finding new labels. And you might be wondering, hey, you know, I don't really want to have sex with all of my boyfriends or girlfriends, but when I do want to have sex, it has only been in a relationship. Could I be demi? Or I get confused about people that have one-night stands. That doesn't make sense to me. Could I be demi? And those are all good things to ask about, but I also do have some questions that I think might be helpful to think about if you are trying to decide if demi is a label that reflects your own individual situation. So, for example, do you typically find the people that you have close connections with to be aesthetically attractive, even if you don't want to have sex with them right away? Do you have sudden moments or experiences in your relationships where beforehand you did not experience sexual attraction, but then after them you do? Do you choose to hold off from sex on purpose even when you have the urge to do so? Or is it that you don't have that urge at all until the relationship or connection is more developed? Do you feel unable to connect with people in a physical, sexual way until you have a deeper bond with them, even if you might be okay with other forms of non-sexual intimate touch like cuddling or holding hands? Do you find the concept of celebrity crushes to be kind of weird or hard to understand? Like, you know that somebody might be objectively attractive, but you can't really picture wanting to have sex with them? Or if you do have celebrity crushes, is it more focused on having a deep, intimate, emotional relationship with them, not really so much sexual upfront? Do the people that you get into relationships with tend to have more in common physically or emotionally? So for example, do you tend to have relationships with people that all have glasses or red hair or long legs, or do they have more in common with their personalities, with their attachment style, with their interests, with their hobbies, even if they might be very physically different from each other? And if those questions don't quite help you understand if you might be demi or not, I would highly recommend a video I found while I was researching for this, which is called I'm Demisexual, How Do I Know by Siobhan Pearson. It's a great conversation from a lesbian demi perspective on this, and I would highly recommend checking it out. But otherwise, that is everything I have for you all today. I really hope that you enjoyed this video and this exploration of demisexuality. I think demisexuals are totally wonderful people and completely valid. If you guys do have any other comments, questions, stories about discovering your own demisexual identity, I would love to hear all that down in the comment section below. If you enjoyed this, if you want to see more from me, please do subscribe because I make videos twice a week about all sorts of kink and BDSM related topics. And finally, if you really enjoyed this, the best way to support my channel is through Patreon. Patreon, as always, is what makes everything on this channel possible. If you do already support me over there, thank you so much. It means the absolute world to me. And until I see you all next time, I hope you have a great rest of your day and a great rest of your week. Bye-bye.